how I approach myself determines how I talk to myself. How I talk to myself determines choice. Choice determines action, and action feeds outcome.
Well, we're excited to talk to you all. And look, so you've got this gym, essentially the league, which is bigger than a gym now. It's like turning into this wellness brand. A lot of it's physical, but a lot of it's mental. Like a lot of what you're coaching on and driving people towards in terms of goals and stuff. It's not just a physical endeavor; it's a mental endeavor. Terry, you recently spoke to a room full of C-suite, like at Lululemon, and there was a topic that you chose. I want to know why you chose the topic. It was about how to shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Why did you choose that topic?
Yeah, for sure. So it was beautiful out in Vancouver for Lululemon's annual fiscal kickoff. It was a treat being out there. Mindset is a big thing for that brand and that population. And so I knew that I had an audience that wanted to do that work and to dive into it. And I'm really incredibly passionate about that work, have a bit of an educational background in it as well. And I think the main reason why I chose it was because I see that a lot of people's limitations are in here, between the ears, in mindset. And so shifting from a fixed mindset, how I characterize it, shifting from my circumstance is my ceiling to a growth mindset, meaning that my circumstance is only information connected to opportunity. Okay, I've gathered information on what's actually going on. I can forgive myself for my mistakes and what might have led to it. I can give grace to others who may have poorly contributed to my efforts towards success. And now, what do I have the opportunity to do in the present moment? So the future looks different from the past. And so I was really excited to go and share about how we can have present moment awareness and a growth mindset to shift from a past that's trash into a future that's treasure. And it all comes back to this moment right here.
I love that. And when we see that you spoke to the NBA performance coaches at the Combine last year, you're going to be speaking to NFL performance coaches this year. Is this thematically the topic that you're typically speaking on?
Yeah, so I find that it's becoming just sort of like, it's that personal brand thing. It's that core message. It's the thing that I keep returning to. You know, I've gone places to speak about nutrition and people will say, hey, we heard you do some mindset stuff. Do that, right? Or I go to speak on fitness.
Yeah, do that.
Or I speak in faith communities and people say, hey, we know you do this mental health stuff too. How does that then support us in spiritual health? So it's that core message. It's the thing I always come back to. Just made my pro debut in the sport of high rocks this past weekend. And this was the stuff I was talking to myself about. So I'm my own audience on it as well, because I too have a brain. That brain produces the mind. Controversial statement here. The brain is the organ. The mind is our will, our emotions, our decision-making processes. And so I had to use my brain to speak to my mind to compel my body under some really tough circumstances. So yeah, to answer your question, it's for the C-suite, it's for the athletic performance groups, it's for our constituency of leaguers here in the fitness organization we run, and even for myself. It's the core message.
I would love to hear a little bit more about that. Can you give us a peek into the talk track that was going on, the loop, earworm, as they call it, whatever it was in your head that you heard that, and you just competed. So give us some context from this past weekend and tell us how you talked yourself through that.
Yeah, for sure. So I try to get really wealthy in a bank. I try to get lots of mental deposits in me. In the same way that for my physical body, I've got to get electrolytes and I've got to get carbohydrates as gasoline to fuel me forward, because there's going to come some moment where my muscles get fatigued and there's a cramp. Oh, some more electrolytes that tops off the stores of what I already had in me. And now the cramp goes away, right? Same thing happens mentally. I'm going to come to a point where my mind wants to give up because it is human, and that is nature. So human nature says, this is hard. I don't want no mas. And so I have to be able to first have a bank to pull from and then be able to make a deposit into that bank. So Ashley can tell you the night before the competition, I was listening to some good David Goggins, and she, being the awesome and supportive partner she is, she was like in it. She was asking questions like, whoa, this guy's crazy. Like, he did what? Like, you know, it was so cool. But I like to get a good bank, and then I'm able to pull from that. So that kind of becomes my inner voice. Whatever I have subjected myself to and taken in becomes the thing that I hear an echo of in those hard moments. So to give one example, one awesome member of our team here at the league, her name is Anne. She once said, every step is a celebration. And so I hear that, I embrace it, I receive it, it means a lot to me, but then I kind of forget about it for a while. Now, in a moment in the race where I have a heavy sandbag on my back, I'm doing loaded lunge walks, I get to a point where I'm almost at the finish of this event, and the judge is like, you have one more step. And I want to cuss the judge out. Like, I'm working hard, I'm tired, lady. Like, I don't want to do one more lunge. But then I remember every step is a celebration. This one next step, I can celebrate it getting me to a finish line. I don't have to loathe this step or wish it away. I want this step. I crave this step, right? So that's just one little snippet, but really it's an ongoing conversation and a dialogue. What I've arrived at is how I approach myself determines how I talk to myself. How I talk to myself determines choice. Choice determines action, and action feeds outcome. Action is the key word in all of this. You can listen to every book and go to every conference and try every tactic, and you find yourself going down a rabbit hole and eventually learning there are no hacks. It's all about action. And though action has precursors, I can't just take blind action when I don't feel like taking action. So the way I approach myself, do I respect myself and believe in myself enough that I can speak to myself a certain way to compel action? Because if so, what I speak is what I seek, and I'm going to speak it and seek it till I actually see it, right? So I can literally talk myself not into doing something hard, but into making the choice to take action toward it. And then suddenly, here we are at outcomes. Here we are at finish lines.
And you made it to the finish line. I'm sure that felt really great. There were some extenuating circumstances for you that you pushed through and clearly pulled from all of those deposits, made a couple of withdrawals that you've been stacking up for a long time. So good thing you had that bank to pull from. I would love to hear a little bit more about your philosophy on having a grow mindset. You've obviously teased it, but if you could just double click into what does it mean to have a grow mindset?
Yeah. So to grow, we must endure discomfort. Think about just the standard physiological processes that all humans go through. Puberty sucks, right? Pain in knees and hips and elbows, like major joint systems feel some pain. Think about the embarrassment of having acne on one's face. For me, I had the squeaky voice situation, right? All this discomfort was good for me because it was growth. I often find too that sometimes in life we go through periods of suffering, periods of just, why doesn't anything make sense? Why am I working harder and earning less? Why are the good opportunities missing me? These are all times in which we can choose to grow, right? So a growth mindset is to not buy into the myth that any person is fearless, but to feel the fear and do it afraid. It's a stepping out on faith thing. It's a choosing to really actually believe all this that's going on is just information. I choose what I do with it. And then if I can find opportunity out of information, I can then find elevation. So speaking more to growth mindset, but making it such that it's just easy to understand, I would say really ultimately it's acknowledge fully that your situation sucks sometimes and that there's no way out of it. And don't wish for a way out of it. Don't go groping for an exit button. Don't try to find an easy way, and to lean into the hard thing that leads to the good thing. That's taking information. That this is what my situation really is. I don't wish it away or downplay it, but I know what my situation should be, and I can take steps toward that today. That's the actionable piece of a growth mindset, in my opinion.
And I think like everything you're talking about, obviously it plays really well in a gym setting or fitness setting, but it definitely plays well too, like in the world of business or being a parent, right? Like just being a parent, all of these are such awesome lessons. I want to ask you about emotional intelligence, which is a phrase that's used a lot now, but like, I know it's another topic you've spoken on, but how do you all look at that in terms of what role that can play in leadership, in leading teams of any size? Talk on that if you would.
Yeah, I think emotional intelligence is huge. Starts with self-awareness, right? If I am not aware of my of emotional intelligence, I can't have a growth mindset in the area of emotional intelligence. I've got to know that I'm adolescent and looking to become more mature in that area, or I don't get that change to happen. So this is where it would be different from the physiological process in that analogy of puberty for mindset. For emotional intelligence, I have to be fully aware. I have to say, am I too quick-tempered? I think I might be. I can say that to myself with compassion and no judgment because I'm just simply calling the situation as it is with the opportunity to apply that information to get to where it should be, right? I think that managing teams, managing kids as a parent, like this stuff really comes forward. I think in moments of frustration, for sure, having to remind oneself, it's important to me how I talk to this person, honoring their dignity as a human being, their humanity, you know what I mean? There comes times in leading a team where you have to dismiss a party from the team, right? And so emotional intelligence comes into play in conversations like that. I'd actually love to hear what Ash has to say on this because I know you partner with me in leadership of this organization and partner with me in leadership of our household with our 3 rowdy kiddos. What would you say on emotional intelligence?
Well, what you started with was exactly what I was thinking about. I thought of, is it Aristotle who said, know thyself? I think that's such a very important place to start with self-awareness and a practical application of what you're describing, especially in terms of the team piece, is kind of also pairing it with vulnerability, right? So I know personally that I can be very direct. I don't like to do a lot of fluff. I like to get to the point. I'm usually very busy. I'm moving quickly. But for a new hire, especially someone who I'm working with a lot, that could be off-putting. They could feel awkward. They could feel like I'm not valuing their time, right? If they don't already know this about me. So something we are working into our operating partner manuals. Our operating partners are the individuals who lead out our locations. We're franchising our gym, the league. So these operating partners we're working with, on a weekly basis. One thing we're adding into our operating partner manual is how I work, how, Ashley works, how Terry works, how Jasmine works, how Corey works, right? To where you kind of have a profile where you put in things like maybe your Enneagram or your DISC personality or your Strengths Finders, but also like, hey, these are the best times to contact me. At these times, I'm probably not going to respond. This is how I deal with conflict. This is how I deal with, X, Y, and Z, so that we can kind of be aware and transparency of how we work, so that it's not surprising to a new hire who's able to like read this and review it that like, oh, right, Ashley just tends to be direct. It doesn't give me license to just be mean and rude and
right,
do my own thing, but it at least allows them to get a little peek into my personality when we haven't really developed that relationship yet, for them to know kind of my heart as well. I think that's really big in terms of emotional IQ. It's like knowing yourself and then being willing to share like that piece of who you are, even that the parts that can be awkward or uncomfortable to kind of address, but you can at least be honest about it up front.
Yeah, and you know what you're talking about? I mean, it's hard because you have to be vulnerable and you have to be willing to accept feedback from people first to just understand yourself, right? What are your blind spots? What are those things that you don't see that others see in you? And so just step one of being vulnerable and being like, hey, I'm going to seek out this feedback and I'm going to take it and I'm going to absorb it. I'm going to figure out what that narrative through line is about me that people are telling me. And so, I mean, all that self-awareness is, you really have to be open to feedback, don't you?
Yep.
There's something, Terry, that you said a couple times. It reminds me of, I'm big into Michael Singer, which is like Untethered Soul. And he's a kind of a modern day philosopher, but he's written some great books. But a lot of what he focuses on, well, something you said a couple times, just like, it's just information. It's just data. Like, don't process it and interpret it as anything other than just, it's information. And then what you do with it is, but we tend to react a lot, don't we? When something happens, giant reactions that can then set our mood.
Prentice, I love how you called out the word reaction there. And I think the more appropriate thing is response. So to get from reaction to response takes growth mindset, takes self-awareness, takes emotional intelligence. And it's really just taking a space. I love how Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor and later became a psychiatrist, he said that between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies your opportunity to choose a response and your freedom. And this same character, Viktor Frankl, talked a lot about how optimists assume the best and get let down when it doesn't happen. Pessimists assume the worst and they're doomed to fail. And so there's this space between optimism and pessimism. There's this space to receive, as you put it perfectly, data, right? It's neutral data. To take that data and to take a breath. How do I choose to respond to that? Now I can, from a more healthy place, see you for who you are, Prentice, not the comment that you made, the thing you said, the way it made me feel. I can question, how's Prentice doing today? What's behind what he said? What might I not be aware of in myself that stoked that response from him, right? And then
you're being curious. That's all curiosity, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you think of it that way, but it's like coming from a curious standpoint instead of just having a reaction or a response like, oh, what's going on with Terry? Let me just kind of think about this and process this before I react.
Right. Yeah. Curiosity over criticism helps us to arrive at response over reaction. That's big.
Yeah. And I think the ability to be able to make that space and to take that pause so that you don't react and you're better at responding is going back to that emotional IQ and knowing yourself, knowing what might trigger you that will make you pop off, right? Knowing how to process in that moment. For some people, it might just be a deep breath. For others, or in other situations, it might be, I need to take a walk. I need to just close my laptop and go take a little walk, get some sun, get some fresh air. Maybe I need to talk with somebody else before responding to this person. Maybe oftentimes I'll have Terry review my emails. Like, again, very direct. So my emails, it's like boom, 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 boom. I'll have him look at it. Is this coming across? Is my heart getting across to this? He's like, oftentimes he's like, you're good to go, because he knows me, and he's like, it's fine. Sometimes he's like, you might want to just sandwich it, make it a little like, add some fluff on the beginning and the end,
compliment sandwich. Yeah.
But it's being willing to get curious, to accept feedback, and to know yourself so that like how you might need to respond in those moments.
Yeah, like a muscle, like it needs work, like it needs attention and work every day. So what are you, Terry and Ashley, specifically, like what are some little things you will do each day to make sure that you are paying attention to it and leveling up?
For me, it's very clear. It's how I start my day. If I start strong, I'm so much better. It's like one thing to, I know it sounds crazy, but wake up at 4:30 in the morning, but so that I can get ready, have my quiet time, get some work in before getting the kids, versus hitting snooze and I'm waking up to my kids screaming and waking up. And now I'm just like this frazzled zombie mom, like screaming and yelling, like, get in the car, we got to go, right? So it all starts there, because now I'm behind with emails after I drop them off. I feel frazzled the whole day. So that for me is huge. This morning I woke up at 4:30. I'm not perfect at it, but it's something that I strive to do. And I was telling Terry just last night, I know this of myself. I know that my day is 1,000 times better when I wake up at 4:30. It's really hard because it's not natural for me, but I can do hard things, and I'm going to set myself up to win. So that would be my answer to that question.
Amazing. Wait, real quick, what time do you go to bed if you're doing the 4:30 wake up call?
9:30.
Okay, good for you.
7 hours.
Yep, that's awesome.
Amazing.
All right.
My aspiration.
Terry, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I think it's, I love Ashley's call out on starting the day strong. For me, it's also like finding the opportunity to start the day over as many times as I need to. I love how Levi Lusko writes in one of his books how astronauts who orbit around planet Earth from space will see 18 different time zones within one day because of the time it takes to get around the Earth. And there was this cool reminder in that if you wanted to, you could see 18 sunrises in a day, right? You could take a moment and say, okay, that was a bad moment. It doesn't have to be a bad day. Doesn't even have to be a bad hour. I can choose to hold a funeral for my feelings. And at the next hour time block, I can say at 3:00 p.m. Central Time, brand new day. New mindset makes it a new day. You can create whatever you need to as a framework for viewing your day differently. And I think that when we do that, we view ourselves differently. I can respect myself differently if I can get past a mistake, if I can take the time to really focus in on the feedback I'm receiving, right? There's an awesome book called Thanks for the Feedback, and it talks about how we should always be good receivers of feedback, and we should also be really honest that some feedback is not good feedback, right? But to take in all the feedback is to give it a fair chance, to filter it, right? And then giving it a little bit of time, taking that space, we can choose to begin again. Who do I want to be now that I've received this feedback? This data, this information? Where's the opportunity in it?
Is there one for both of you? Is there one book, retreat, seminar, talk, certain kind of therapy, anything that you've done specifically in your life that was the most transformational thing in this respect? I know it's like a life work for both of you and you invest in it daily, but do you kind of like go back to something and say, wow, my week in California at whatever, is there something that you can share with us that you've done that was really transformational?
Good question. I think for me, anytime I end up facilitating or speaking, it's funny because I go to teach, but then I come away with learnings. And so that's really powerful for me. And then also in terms of book, one of my favorite books ever is Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday. That has absolutely been a game changer for me.
Gosh, that's a really great question that I have not actually thought of. Like if there was like a moment or a thing. I just recently finished John Mark Comer's Practicing the Way. It's a book about practicing the way of Jesus. And I'm a Christian, and man, it's a kind of like, I've never read a book. I listened to it, which is easier for me, but I've never listened or read to a book that I thought I just want to keep reading it. Like I didn't want it to end. And I truly think I'm just going to keep listening to it in the mornings because it's just so incredibly powerful. And he put words to so many things that I needed to hear or that I wanted to express but couldn't. But I can tend to not do great with rest and stillness and quiet. And it was a lot of that. And so that's just kind of what's top.
Thank you for sharing that. I'll put that on my list. I've not heard of that book. When you hit on one that's so good that you're willing to listen to it on Audible and repeat, because you're like, this is only going to be good reinforcement. This is only going to feed my soul and I'm going to pick up things I may not have heard before. So yeah. I get that.
I loved your bank analogy, Terry, of just the need to constantly fill your mind and constantly absorb positive influences across the board so that in those pressing moments you can pull from them. and you never know when they're going to come. And it might be because of physical stress or just life stress that's going to come. But that's such a great analogy. I'm really focused on my own nutrition and always putting in so many good things into my body to be able to ride out waves of stress. And in the same way for our minds to constantly be filling it with the bank of goodness. So that's inspiring to me. And Ashley, I want to talk to you specifically because of your work. You have the league that you obviously side by side with Terry have led in the fast expansion of this system now, as Prentice said, a wellness brand more so, but a couple gyms that are now in different cities. But outside of that work, you also are a consultant and you have an incredible mind for business, and you're able to guide small to medium businesses through those growth moments as well. And I'm curious to know, in your work as a consultant with entrepreneurs and executives, what are some of the most common mental blocks that you see, and how do you help guide them to shift their mindset through those blocks?
It's funny you say entrepreneurs and executives. So, one of my main programs is called Prove It Plan. It's for developing a strategic business plan. And so I take what can be a monster of what it means to launch and start a business and try to break it down into practical bite-sized steps in my course. And I think that's the biggest thing. Folks will come in with this grand idea, and they typically are thinking about the marketing pieces. They're thinking about their website. They're thinking about their social media. They're thinking about their logo and their colors, all the cute, fun, sexy stuff, But then when I start to ask questions about, like, have you done financial projections to understand, like, when you can start paying yourself? Did you consider taxes, like saving for taxes? Are you going to be an S corp for tax purposes? What are we looking at in terms of legal? It's just, I could just see, I don't ask it like that, right? But I could just see it. Initially I did, and I would just see like the overwhelm, right? And so I think it's important to try to take what can feel so like the magnitude of it all and breaking it down. I think that's huge. And then with executives in particular, folks who are used to corporate structures, they're used to having one job and wearing one hat. As an entrepreneur, you are many, many things, right? And so it's like this realization of like, oh, I am the COO, the CMO, the CTO, the legal liaison. I'm the, and it can be a lot. And so I think the biggest mindset shift is, let's not start with yoga retreats in Bali, right? Let's just start with, what audience do we have right here, right now? And how do we build up to that? One of the phases, or one of the parts of Prove It Plan, is a phases of the business exercise where there's different goals and we phase it out. So maybe you're not starting with their yoga retreats international. Maybe you're starting with something just local, right? And building up until you're profitable, or building up until you have 6 figures of revenue, so that you don't just burn out, because inevitably it's going to be too much. And I really try to help folks build a sustainable business that'll last and stand the test of time. And a lot of that comes with having a plan, which sometimes folks are very averse to for, shocking reasons to me, but then also just taking it bite-sized, one step at a time.
Break it down. I love that. That's so interesting. Well, we are so grateful for you guys just, again, taking time out to speak to us and our audience, obviously, of marketing executives, but we have made this show be a place where we can talk shop about marketing, but also talk to that human, that person that is carrying a lot of responsibility, specifically often in marketing, but leading teams, developing themselves personally in their own leadership growth and just growth as a human. And so you guys have spoken to a lot of those different areas, and I'm just grateful for what you've had to share and personally inspired. So thank you.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.